We are used to thinking of history as a straight line. First, there was the cave, the stone axe, then the bronze sword, then the wheel, then the steam engine, and finally the iPhone. This is a line of progress, from the bottom up, from the primitive to the complex. This model is simple, logical, and reassuring. We are the pinnacle of evolution. But what if this line is a lie? Imagine archaeologists opening the tomb of an Egyptian pharaoh, sealed 3,000 years ago. They blow away the dust of centuries, open the sarcophagus, and find a Casio digital watch on the mummy's wrist. Or imagine miners, breaking through a 300-million-year-old coal seam, finding a finely crafted gold chain embedded in the rock. Sound like nonsense? Like a script for a cheap sci-fi movie? Perhaps. But the problem is, such objects exist. They are called OPARTs, out-of-place artifacts. These are objects that, according to our worldview, simply shouldn't exist. They appear in the wrong place, at the wrong time, and are made with technologies that people of that era could not have possessed. Mainstream science often ignores them. They lie in museum storage rooms with labels like ritual object or unknown purpose. Or they are declared forgeries. Because to acknowledge them would mean rewriting the history books. If an iron hammer is found in a rock layer from the time of the dinosaurs, we have a problem. Either geology is wrong about the dating of the layers, or there was a civilization in the Jurassic period. If the Greeks had a computer 2,000 years ago capable of predicting eclipses, we have a problem. Where did this knowledge go? Why did humanity plunge into darkness for 1,000 years? Today, we won't play conspiracy theorists. We won't claim that the pyramids were built by aliens with laser cutters. We will simply look at the facts. At physical objects that can be touched, weighed, and x-rayed. We will gather the clues that don't fit into the puzzle. And we will start with the most famous, most undisputed, and most shocking artifact in the history of archaeology. An object that proved our ancestors were not primitive savages in togas, but brilliant engineers whose achievements we still cannot replicate without modern machinery. In 1900, before Easter, a group of sponge divers was caught in a storm off the Greek island of Antikythera. Descending underwater, they didn't find sponges. They found the Titanic of the ancient world. On the seabed, at a depth of 60 meters, lay a huge Roman ship filled with treasures. Bronze statues, marble horses, jewelry. Among this splendor, the divers brought a shapeless lump of corroded bronze and wood to the surface. It looked like junk. It was thrown into a crate in the courtyard of the Athens Museum and forgotten for 2 years. Until one day, the bronze dried and cracked. An archaeologist, Valerios Stais, passing by, noticed something strange inside the crack. A gear wheel, with perfectly uniform teeth. This was impossible. The ship sank in the 1st century BC, during the time of Julius Caesar. Back then, gears were used, if at all, in primitive watermills, crude wooden wheels. But this was precision mechanics, comparable to 18th century clockwork. The artifact was named the Antikythera mechanism. For years, scientists argued. Skeptics said it was an astrolabe, or just a complex toy. That the gear had accidentally fallen from a Victorian-era ship onto the wreck site. But in the 1970s and again in the 2000s, the mechanism was scanned using gamma tomography. What the scientists saw in the images left them speechless. Inside that piece of rust was a highly complex mechanism of 37 bronze gears, with a differential gear. Did you hear that? A differential gear. A mechanism that allows axles to rotate at different speeds. We invented it for automobiles only in the late 19th century. The Greeks were using it 2,000 years earlier. This was the world's first analog computer. On the front panel were 2 dials. One showed the position of the sun and moon in the zodiac. The other showed the phases of the moon. The mechanism even accounted for the moon's elliptical orbit. It moves faster when it's closer to Earth. This was achieved using an ingenious pin and slot system. On the back panel were spiral scales that predicted solar and lunar eclipses decades in advance, and even the color of the eclipse, and a small additional dial for the Olympics, the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games. Imagine a device the size of a shoebox. You turn a handle on the side and all the pointers move, displaying the celestial mechanics with incredible accuracy. It's like finding a jet engine in Tutankhamun's tomb. This artifact shatters our concept of technological evolution. We thought mechanics developed smoothly, from simple pulleys to complex clocks. Antikythera shows that there was a peak of high technology that we simply forgot about. The technology appeared out of nowhere, reached perfection, and then disappeared for 1,500 years. Who created it? Archimedes? Hipparchus? And most importantly, how many such devices were there? The Antikythera mechanism was clearly not a prototype. It's too complex, too perfect. This suggests mass production. Where are the others? Most likely they were melted down for swords and bells during the Dark Ages. Bronze is a valuable metal. Barbarians didn't value science, they valued weapons. This mechanism proves that ancient people possessed knowledge of mathematics and engineering on par with the Renaissance era. But if they had computers, even mechanical ones, perhaps they experimented with other forces of nature. For example, with electricity. In 1936, a strange clay pot was found near Baghdad. It looked unremarkable, but its internal structure led one German engineer to an incredible hypothesis. Wilhelm König, director of the National Museum of Iraq, was sorting through boxes of finds from the Parthian settlement of Kujut Rabu. He found a yellow clay vessel about 13 centimeters high. The neck was sealed with bitumen, an ancient equivalent of asphalt or tar. Inside the pot was a cylinder made from a rolled sheet of copper. And inside the copper cylinder, separated by another layer of bitumen, hung an iron rod. The iron was heavily corroded, as if it had been eaten away by acid. König looked at this construction with the eyes of an engineer, not a historian. Copper, iron, an insulator, a container for liquid. To anyone familiar with 8th grade physics, this looks like a galvanic cell, a battery. If you pour an electrolyte, vinegar, lemon juice, or wine, into this pot, a potential difference will arise between the copper and the iron. A chemical reaction will create an electric current. After World War II, engineers at General Electric built a replica of this device. They filled it with vinegar, and it worked. The Baghdad Battery produced a voltage of about half a volt, a weak current, but a real, measurable electric current. The artifact is about 2,000 years old. From the Parthian Empire. Mainstream science asserts that electricity was discovered by Galvani and Volta in the late 18th century. Alessandro Volta created his voltaic pile in 1800. But it turns out that 2,000 years before him, in the deserts of Iraq, someone already knew how to tame lightning. The question is, why? They didn't have light bulbs. They didn't have electric motors. Why did they need half a volt? Skeptics say it was just a container for storing scrolls. The copper protected the papyrus, and the bitumen sealed it. But why the iron rod inside? Iron rusts and would damage the scrolls. The most popular theory is electroplating. Jewelers could have used such batteries to apply a thin layer of gold or silver to cheaper metals. Gilding. We know that ancient craftsmen were skilled at creating high-quality gold plating. By connecting several such pots in series, one could obtain enough voltage for the process of electrolysis. Imagine a Parthian jeweler. He doesn't know formulas. He doesn't know about electrons, but he knows the recipe. Take a pot, a copper tube, an iron nail, pour in soured wine, and magic happens. A statuette becomes coated in gold. This knowledge was passed down as a trade secret, like magic. But there is another bolder theory. Medicine. The Greeks and Romans used electric rays to treat pain and gout. This is a documented fact. They would apply the live fish to the afflicted area. The electric shock acted as an anesthetic. Could the Baghdad Battery have been an artificial electric ray? A device for electroacupuncture? In any case, this clay pot shatters our arrogance. We think of electricity as our invention, a hallmark of modern civilization. But it turns out that the components to create it were lying underfoot for thousands of years. Clay, copper, iron, vinegar. One just had to assemble them correctly. If the ancients knew the geography of electric current, perhaps they knew another geography as well. The geography of the planet itself, which we thought we had only recently discovered. In 1929, in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a map drawn on gazelle skin was found. It belonged to the admiral of the Turkish fleet, Piri Reis, and was dated 1513. At first glance, it appears to be a typical Portolan chart, a nautical map of the time. Piri Reis was an honest cartographer. In the margins, he wrote that he had not explored these lands himself, but had compiled the map from 20 older sources, including maps by Christopher Columbus and mysterious maps from the time of Alexander the Great. The map shows the west coast of Africa, the east coast of South America, and another continent at the very south. The coastline of this southern continent extends eastward from South America. In 1513, Antarctica had not yet been discovered. It would be officially discovered in 1820 by Russian navigators Bellingshausen and Lazarev, nearly 300 years after Piri Reis's map was made. But that's not the shocking part. The shock is in the details. The map depicts the coastline of Queen Maud Land, its mountain ranges, rivers, and islands. But Antarctica has been covered in ice for millions of years. An ice sheet 1.5 kilometers thick conceals the continent's topography. How could a Turkish admiral have known the outline of a coast hidden under ice? In 1960, Professor Charles Hapgood sent the map to the U.S. Air Force. He asked intelligence experts, does the coastline on the Piri Reis map correspond to seismic sounding data of the subglacial terrain? The military's response was stunning. The coastline has been mapped with astonishing accuracy. We have no idea how this data could have been obtained in 1513. This gave rise to the theory of an ancient, highly advanced seafaring civilization that mapped the world before the last ice age, when Antarctica was free of ice. Hapgood suggested the map was copied from sources that were 6,000 or even 10,000 years old. Skeptics, of course, object. They argue it's not Antarctica, but simply the hypothetical Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land, that ancient cartographers drew for balance. They claim the coastline's resemblance is a coincidence or a distortion of South America, which was bent at the bottom of the page because the parchment ran out. Indeed, upon closer inspection, the Antarctica on the map is connected to South America by an isthmus, which is geologically incorrect. But there is another map, the Orontius Phineas map of 1531. It depicts Antarctica in its entirety, with mountains and rivers where glaciers now lie. The outlines of the Ross Sea Mountains are remarkably similar to modern data. If this was a cartographer's fantasy, then he had devilish intuition. But even if we assume the maps are a matter of interpretation, there are artifacts that cannot be dismissed as an artist's fantasy, because they are not made of ink and skin. They are made of iron and stone. And they are found where humans could not possibly have been. Not just before Columbus, but before mammals. Imagine a hammer, an ordinary iron hammer with a wooden handle, but it is embedded in a limestone rock that is 100 million years old. This is the London hammer. No, not from Britain, but from the town of London, Texas, USA. In 1936, the Hahn family was crossing a creek and noticed a piece of rock with wood sticking out of it. They broke off a piece of the rock. Inside was a hammer. The iron head is 15 centimeters long. The wooden handle is partially petrified, turned into coal. Geologists dated the rock in which the hammer was found to the Cretaceous period, the time of the dinosaurs, 110 to 115 million years ago. We have two options. Option A, humanity, or someone with hands and tools, lived in the age of dinosaurs. This shatters the entire theory of evolution. Option B, the hammer is modern, but it somehow became rapidly encased in stone. Science leans toward option B. This phenomenon is called concretion. Limestone is a soft, soluble rock. Under certain conditions, mineral salts can rapidly precipitate around an object, creating a hard shell. A hammer lost by a 19th century miner could have fallen into a crack, been covered with silt, and fossilized over 100 years. Analysis of the metal showed it consists of 96% iron, 2.6% chlorine, and 0.74% sulfur. It contains no carbon. Modern steel contains carbon. This iron is very pure and does not rust. Skeptics say this is just an old smelting technique. Art proponents say it's a lost ancient technology. But while the hammer can be debated as a case of rapid petrification, the next artifact is harder to explain. The Coso artifact. In 1961, in the mountains of California, prospectors looking for geodes, rocks with crystals inside, found a strange specimen. When they cut the stone with a diamond saw, they broke the blade. There was something very hard inside. At the center of the geode was a white porcelain cylinder. Inside the porcelain was a magnetic metal rod. Geologists estimated the age of the geode at 500,000 years, 500,000 years. At that time, Homo erectus roamed the earth with stone hand axes, and inside the stone was a spark plug. An X-ray revealed the exact structure of a 1920s Champion spark plug. How did a spark plug from a Ford Model T get inside a stone that is 500,000 years old? Skeptics again point to concretion. The geode could have formed quickly from mud and clay around trash left by miners. But the Koso artifact has disappeared. Its whereabouts are unknown. We only have photos and X-ray images. These stories often end in a stalemate. It's a forgery, or it's a natural process. The arguments on both sides seem weak. But there is one out-of-place artifact that cannot be hidden, cannot be lost, and cannot be called a concretion. Because it's not a small object you can put in your pocket. It's a massive temple complex weighing thousands of tons. And its existence is recognized by mainstream science. And it is the one that has dealt the most devastating blow to the history books. In southern Turkey, on a hill called Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt found something that made him say, "This discovery will change everything." He wasn't exaggerating. Göbekli Tepe is the most important archaeological site on the planet. It is a temple complex of huge stone circles, T-shaped pillars up to 5 meters high and weighing up to 20 tons. They are carved with intricate bas-reliefs of animals, lions, foxes, scorpions, vultures. But the problem isn't the beauty. The problem is the date. Radiocarbon dating showed that Göbekli Tepe was built around 11,600 years ago, 9,500 years BC. Let's process that number. That's 7,000 years older than Stonehenge. That's 7,000 years older than the Egyptian pyramids. At that time, according to official history, humans were hunter-gatherers. They lived in small nomadic groups. They had no writing, no wheel, no metal, no pottery, and most importantly, they had no agriculture. They were simply running through the forests with spears chasing deer. The official theory states, first, humans invented agriculture, the Neolithic Revolution. This created a food surplus. The food surplus allowed for the creation of large settlements. Large settlements gave rise to religion, bureaucracy, and monumental construction. Göbekli Tepe turned this model on its head. Here, hunter-gatherers came together and built a massive temple before they invented agriculture. It's like a 3-year-old who can't walk yet building a skyscraper out of Lego. How did they feed the hundreds of workers needed to move 20-ton stones? By hunting gazelles? That's a logistical nightmare. How did they work the stone without metal tools? With flint chisels? The bas-reliefs on the pillars are not primitive scratches. This is high art. 3-dimensional images of predators carved directly onto the monoliths. Klaus Schmidt suggested that it was religion that forced people to invent agriculture to feed the temple builders. First came the temple, then the city. But there is a more chilling thought. Göbekli Tepe was not just abandoned. Around 8,000 BC, it was deliberately buried under soil. Someone expended enormous effort to entomb this complex under tons of earth. Why? To hide it? Or to preserve it for posterity? A time capsule? Göbekli Tepe proves that we have underestimated our ancestors, deeply underestimated them. If savages could build such megaliths 12,000 years ago, then civilization is much older than Sumer in Egypt. And if they could work with stone at this level, perhaps they had tools whose traces we find in other parts of the world. Traces that look like the work of modern machinery. Look at Egypt. Not at the pyramids, but at the vases. In the storage rooms of the Cairo Museum, there are thousands of stone vessels, made of diorite, granite, and schist, some of the hardest rocks on Earth. Some of these vases date back to the pre-dynastic period. That is, they were made before the pharaohs. Their forms are perfect. The walls are so thin they are translucent, perfectly symmetrical. How did people with copper chisels do this? Sir William Flinders Petrie, the father of modern Egyptology, was not just a historian. He was a metrology engineer. He studied the tool marks on Egyptian artifacts, and what he found left him baffled. He studied granite cores, drilled rock cylinders, found at Giza. They showed spiral grooves, marks from a drill. Petrie calculated that the drill advanced into the granite at a rate of 2.5 millimeters per revolution. For comparison, modern diamond drills boring into granite advance by fractions of a millimeter per revolution. To achieve a rate of 2.5 millimeter, you would need to apply a vertical pressure of 2 tons to the drill. How did the Egyptians apply 2 tons of pressure to a copper tube rotated by a bow and string? And why didn't the copper wear away faster than the granite? Petrie suggested they used gemstones, diamonds, or corundum, on the cutting edge. But even with diamonds, you need the speed and stability that only a machine can provide. Manual drilling leaves uneven marks. Here, the grooves form a perfect spiral. Now let's cross the ocean. To Peru, Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo. Megalithic walls built from enormous polygonal blocks. Stones weighing up to 100 tons are fitted together with such precision that you can't slip a razor blade between them. This isn't just good masonry, it's a 3D puzzle. The stones have complex, irregular shapes with protrusions and indentations that fit together perfectly. It is a seismic-resistant design. When an earthquake occurs, the stones dance and then settle back into place. How did the Incas do this? They had no iron. They had no wheel. According to the official version, they pounded the stones with other stones. Try pounding 200-ton boulders so that their curved surfaces match with millimeter precision, while they are suspended in the air. Some blocks have marks that look like they were scooped out, as if the stone were soft, like clay, and someone removed the excess with a spoon. This has led to the hypothesis of stone softening, that the ancient builders knew of a chemical compound of plant origin that could temporarily make granite pliable. Local legends speak of a bird that brings an herb in its beak capable of melting rock. It sounds like a fairy tale. But when you stand before the wall of Sacsayhuaman and see a complex stone with 12 corners perfectly fitted into the structure, the pounding with a cobblestone version seems like an even bigger fairy tale. We look at these traces, the tube drilling in Egypt, the clay-like masonry in Peru, and we see the signature of high technology. This is not 21st century technology, it's something different. Another path of development, based on sound, vibration, or chemistry that we do not understand, and that we have lost. These artifacts are like pieces from a different Lego set that accidentally ended up in our box. They don't fit, and they are frustrating. We have collected a whole gallery of anomalies. The Antikythera mechanism, a Bronze Age computer. The Baghdad Battery, electricity in a pot. Göbekli Tepe, a cathedral built by hunter-gatherers. Polygonal masonry, stone as soft as butter. What are we to do with all this? We have 3 paths. The first path is denial. To say that these are all forgeries, dating errors, or geological quirks. This is the path of comfort. It allows us to keep our neat, straight line of progress. We are the smartest, and before us was darkness. The second path is fantasy. To say it was aliens, Atlanteans, or time travelers. This is the path of a lazy mind. It explains one mystery with another, even more incredible mystery. Instead of an answer, we get a fairy tale. But there is a third path, the most difficult one. To admit that human history is not a straight line, it's a spiral, or even a cardiogram, with peaks and valleys. Perhaps we are not the first civilization on this planet to reach a high level, and perhaps not the last. Knowledge is lost. Technologies are forgotten. The Romans knew how to make concrete that sets underwater and lasts for 2,000 years. We forgot that recipe in the Middle Ages and only recently rediscovered it. In the 19th century, we didn't know to wash our hands before surgery, even though 2,000 years earlier, doctors in India sterilized their instruments. Progress is reversible. Out-of-place artifacts. OU parts are beacons. Signals from the other side of time. They tell us, we were smart too. We also knew how to build for the ages, and look what's left of us. Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. The Antikythera mechanism sank. Libraries burned. We are looking at the past through a keyhole. We see only fragments. And sometimes what we see frightens us, because it looks like a reflection in a mirror. We see ourselves. People trying to understand the world, inventing, building, making mistakes. These artifacts don't destroy history. They make it richer. They make it real. The next time you see a strange object in a museum labeled ritual object, stop. Look closer. Maybe it's not a religious symbol. Maybe it's a schematic for a microchip carved in stone, or a part from an engine that stopped working 10,000 years ago. The truth is out there. But it is hidden under layers of earth, water, and our own ignorance. Thank you for joining us in this investigation. And remember, history is written by the victors, but time preserves the evidence of the losers.